to the front lines of the pandemic, something we've been watching throughout the last couple of weeks. We've seen case counts rising on a national level. Still the case here, as we again saw 45,830, the new level hit here, and that was somewhat distorted by the numbers out of Florida, as we didn't fully get the reports there. But that does seem to be the trend: rising cases, as well as now something a lot of people had feared would happen on a lag from when we first saw this. Start a couple weeks ago. Now hospitalizations rising as well. So to break it all down, I'm happy to bring on our next guest here, Dr. Joseph Sakran, Director of Emergency General Surgery at Johns Hopkins Hospital, joins us now. And Dr. Sakran, thanks for taking the time to chat. I know you're very busy, so I appreciate it. But when we look at the trend here, rising numbers, this does seem to be, we've heard it, the start of the second wave. And this was the time we were supposed to start to get everything under control ahead of those cold winter months. That doesn't seem to be the case at all. So how worried are you about where we go from here with hospitalizations, as I noted, starting to trend higher?
Yeah, well, thanks so much, Zach, for having me. And you're absolutely correct. We are beginning to see this second peak that I think so many of us from a healthcare and public health perspective have been so concerned about. And as we look at the increase in numbers and that variability that exists across states throughout the nation, of course, you're going to see a subsequent increase in hospitalizations, and then there'll be a delay and you'll see a subsequent increase in deaths. And this includes places like Florida, where we know the president is going to be visiting today. And so, really from a public health perspective, it is so critical that we follow some of those basic guidelines that so many of us have been preaching about for, this past year.
Yeah, when you talk about the risks around that, of course, President Trump has hosted campaign events before. You said that. I mean, he's going to be doing it again, hitting the campaign trail again with the event in SANFORD tonight. So, I mean, when you see things like that happening and kind of flying in the face of some of the warnings we've heard from medical professionals, what do you make of it?
Yeah, well, look, it's concerning. I mean, I think that the president of the United States has the ability to lead by example. And what we know from prior events that the president has had is often they do not follow the very basic public health measures, such as encouraging the usage of people wearing masks, physical distancing, and so forth. This is so critical, especially as we start to see this rise of cases as we work into the fall, where more individuals are going to be inside because of weather in the majority of areas across the country. And so I think he has a real opportunity.
Well, this is going to be the first campaign rally we've seen since his positive COVID-19 diagnosis. So we'll see what happens out there. I'm sure there's a lot of voters interested to see what the state of the president looks like back on the campaign trail. But he's credited a lot of the medical treatments that were given to him, notably Regeneron's antibody cocktail. And we are seeing the U.S. strike a new deal here with AstraZeneca for a similar treatment through Operation Warp Speed. It's going to be $486 million going to AstraZeneca from the U.S. government to develop and secure supplies of up to 100,000 doses of their antibody treatment. So now you've got AstraZeneca, Eli Lilly, Regeneron, all offering similar treatments here. How big of a deal is that when we think about putting that on the table for doctors to use to help patients?
Look, I think we should be exploring all sorts of therapeutics, including monoclonal antibody. And I'm not opposed to the utilization of monoclonal antibodies in the cocktails. But I think what we need to do is we need to let the science play out to ensure that the therapy is actually safe and effective. And in fact, when you listen to the leadership of Regeneron, for example, they will tell you that, the president's case is really just a case report. It's one example. And we don't know whether or not it was the monoclonal antibody. Maybe it was one of the other medications that he happened to be on. So I think we need to let the science play out. I think it's super concerning to have the president out there claiming that this is a cure because it really, we don't know that just yet. So we really have to wait until we have all the data.
Yeah, responsible actions there from the CEO of Regeneron. We saw in that interview with CBS, noting that it's not a cure. Didn't want to go that far, just saying it's case one, as you said, but important because we have seen a lot of the responsibilities from the CEOs of these big pharma companies saying, look, we want to make sure that these things are safe before we move forward. And that is a big piece of this puzzle here when we think about public confidence. It's been waning in the FDA when we saw the White House pressuring the FDA to make sure they could move a little bit quicker. We saw the pushback from the FDA saying, look, we don't want to move too fast on approving some of these vaccine candidates. We need to wait and see what the phase 3 trials show in safety and efficacy before we want to move forward. But how important is that to you as a doctor here when we think about what will happen if we do get a vaccine? It's not going to matter much if the American public doesn't feel confident in actually going and getting that vaccine and bringing the case numbers down. So how important is that third factor here when we think about Americans' confidence in the system and the safety of getting one of these vaccines rolled out?
Yeah, I mean, I think your point, Zach, is spot on. This is so critical that we don't let political pressure overcome the science. And it may not be a surprise that a lot of us are a bit skeptical, considering early on in the pandemic, we saw the FDA issue an emergency use authorization for hydroxychloroquine without adequate data on efficacy or safety. We subsequently saw a similar authorization issued for convalescent plasma. Look, the consequences of these decisions not only impacted patients, but continued to erode the public trust in governmental oversight. So we can't afford to repeat that process, especially for a vaccine product that we need the majority of otherwise healthy Americans to receive in order to end this public health crisis. So I think your point is well taken and something that a lot of us have been concerned about.
Hey investors, Zach Guzman here. Are you interested in learning more about the markets and getting the latest financial news? Well, then click right here to subscribe to our Yahoo Finance YouTube channel. Get the latest up-to-the-minute market analysis, big interviews in the world of finance, and information on how to manage your money every day wherever you are.